Hi everyone, Blake Crash Priddle here, and thanks for joining us once again on the Medley. This week we're going to be speaking with Secord, a former NHL player and enforcer from my hometown of Espanola. He played for 12 years in the NHL from 1978 until 1990, playing for the Philadelphia Flyers, Chicago Blackhawks, the Boston Bruins, and my favorite team, the Toronto Maple Leafs. You'll also get to learn about how he decided to become an airline pilot following his NHL career. Good to have you on the show this week, Al. And this is the first time in 20 years that we've seen each other. We have met before, but it was at a alumni game in Espanola, our hometown.
I was going to say that was a long time ago. That was a fun time against Montreal.
What ignited your passion for hockey?
I think, like most Canadian boys, we see so much hockey on TV with Hockey Night in Canada, watching either the Toronto Maple Leafs or Montreal Canadiens. And like most other kids, my passion was to give it a try. And once I did, of course, I fell in love with it, had a passion, and went through the various minor hockey systems that we have here in Canada, and was fortunate to have good supporting family that drove me to the rink and gave me the equipment that I needed and the support of equipment and sticks and pucks and tape, and fortunately it worked out.
You grew up in Espanola, Ontario, which also happens to be my hometown, and there's a lot of lakes in the area. Did you go skating on any of those lakes during the winter, and did you practice on any of them?
Absolutely. My dad had a open cockpit bulldozer that he used to keep a quarter mile of our road into our home with. And he used to take that same bulldozer and put it out on the lake. And of course, back then, I think it was a lot colder. The ice was much thicker, so we could hold the weight of that bulldozer, and he would clear me a rink. And then we'd take 4x8 sheets of plywood and make a backstop. And that's where I got most of my ice time was out on the lake. And he figured out how to run an extension cord and have a light out there for nighttime. And I used to lose all my pucks in the snow, and they'd sink to the bottom of the lake, but I'd have a fresh set of pucks for next year. It was Loon Lake, which is the third lake from town. That's actually where I was born and raised. We had a resort called Loon Lake Lodge. And there's actually three lakes, Loon Lake, Cleveland, and Stratton. So I grew up basically on that lake, my entire life until I left home.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of lakes in the Espanola area, but I can't say I've ever been to Loon Lake.
Yes, it's exactly 4 miles south of the Espanola Mall. And like I said, it was just we went to a tourist resort in the summertime, and wintertime we I said about my dad, he used to plow and keep the road open, and I think it was fairly popular with the locals, but we had a lot of tourists come there, camping and fishing and staying in the cottages, and that place was actually a great place to grow up. I was the garbage man, rake the beach, clean the boats, dig ditches, all that kind of stuff. So actually, I think that's where I got a lot of my work ethic that helped me towards my hockey.
Well, Espanola definitely is a hockey town. Lots of people love hockey, including my parents and my high school teacher that told me he went to school with you, which I thought was really cool.
And who was that teacher?
Mr. John Diebel, a.k.a. Mr. D.
Absolutely. Yeah, John and I were in school together, I think he moved into town in grade 6. So yeah, we did most of high school and grade 6.
Did any particular NHL player inspire you?
Yes, there were several actually. My favorite team at the time was the Montreal Canadiens, and there was several players on that team that I really liked. One was Jean Beliveau, number 4. He was the captain. He was the epitome of smooth hockey style, class. His interviews were great. I thought he was such a great representation for the game. And then on the opposite spectrum was Johnny Ferguson, who was the tough guy pretty well in the league, and I used to love watching him. And then there was a guy named Jacques Laperriere, number 2, and I liked him because I had his hockey card. And if you put my dad's face beside Jacques Laperriere, you'd swear they were twins. So I liked him because he looked like my dad.
Making it to the NHL is a very long journey, and some people never make it. How did you land an NHL career?
Well, I think what happens is, of course, as we talked about, you have a passion for the game. You go through the different minor hockey systems, and as the talents of rises to the top, again, I had good support from my parents. I just put in the repetitions. I think that was required. Fortunately, I had size on my side. I didn't have the maturity like most guys or the skills, but I had size, and I was able to move up into the junior leagues at 14. So that got me in competition with guys 16 to 21 years old. So that really catapulted me into being a better player. And it wasn't really till my second year junior, so you're 18 or 19 years old, that I figured that I had a shot to play in the NHL. And then my dad and I talked about it. We figured out what we needed to accomplish for the remaining year and a half, and we did that. And fortunately, I was drafted in 1978.
And prior to that, you used to play for an old team, which is long since defunct, called the Hamilton Fincaps, and that's where you won the Memorial Cup, right?
Yeah, that's correct. That's right. We had two owners in Hamilton. They were called the Pinocchio and Caputo. They were real estate guys, and they ended up buying I believe it was the Hamilton Red Wings, and called it Fincaps, taking half of their names. And my very first year, we went to Memorial Cup. Second year, I thought we had the best team in Canada, but we lost out in the semifinals. And same even my third year junior, we ended up eighth game overtime against the Peterborough Petes to go to the Memorial Cup. So we should have been there for 3 years. But that's hockey, and was fortunate to win one in 1976.
Well, speaking of junior hockey in our hometown, one of the teams that was around for a really long time was called the Espanola Eagles. I assume that you went to a couple of those games when you were a kid?
I did. Actually, I was the timekeeper for the Eagles. I did that for a couple of years. The reason I did it is because I got a free hot dog and a free glass of orange pop. And yeah, I did the timekeeping for a couple of years for those games. And then when I was 14, I went out for a tryout and made the team. And again, being 14, playing with guys 16 to 20 years, that really did help me along.
You mentioned getting the free hot dog. I always find that food at the arena always seems to taste better. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I remember walking in the building and the smell of the canteen with all the sugar and the hot dogs and whatever else they were selling. Yeah, that was one of my favorite stops. I actually lived pretty close to that canteen the whole time I was a rink rat.
Of all the NHL teams that you played for over the years, which one would you say is your favorite?
Well, I actually enjoyed them all, but all for different reasons. Going to the Boston Bruins at 20 years old, of course, eyes wide open. It was a fairly old team, the average age being 28 years old. But the point is, I walked into that room and it had everybody's hockey cards, so I was in awe. And we were a very tough team, very close knit. They took me under the wing, took good care of me at 20 years old. So I always thought that was a special time. I had most of my success on the ice in Chicago. I played with some really good players. And Timmy Higgins, Steve Larmer, Dougie Wilson, Dennis Savard, who was my line mate. So, I had some success there. I was then traded to Toronto, and even though our team didn't do so well, it was nice to be kind of back home and seeing my family more often and my relatives that were in the Toronto area. From there, I went to Philadelphia, and I was always very impressed by their organization. They really do take care of their players, and the people in Philadelphia just love hockey.
I hear that the sports fans there can be quite rowdy. Is that true?
Very, very rowdy. You watch the football team, the Eagles, and their rivals, like the Dallas Cowboys and the Flyers and, say, the Rangers or New Jersey Devils. I mean, they love their hockey, very supportive, and they can get pretty rowdy in that building, the old Spectrum.
Yeah, I wonder how they compare to the Sudbury Wolf fans.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, hockey in Northern Ontario, it's a staple, and it's the same thing. I mean, Canadian hockey, the people love their players and support them strongly. And yes, back in the old days, I think more of the emotions were allowed to run, that the games were a lot more physical, so I could see the emotions running a little stronger back then, especially if one of your local town boys, gets beat up or hit with a hard check. So I can remember quite a few fans in Sudbury, stepping into fights up in the stands with the opposing fans, and it was. Actually, there was a lot of rinks like that in the Ontario Junior League, so it was pretty exciting to watch from the bench.
What some people may not know about the arena in Sudbury is that they actually have a stuffed taxidermy wolf up in the ceiling, and every time they score, the wolf goes across the ceiling on some pulleys. It's really funny.
Yeah, it is. I don't know if they still have that, but I remember that wolf flying across after each goal, and that was one of the mangiest looking wolves I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, they still have it. It's very similar to the tradition of throwing an octopus on the rink in Detroit, I think. A lot of fans consider you to be a hockey enforcer. How do you feel about fighting in hockey today? Because I know a lot of leagues are banning fighting, including the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League here on the East Coast.
Yeah, well, coming from the old style hockey, I think some of the rules are good. I think there should be more physicality in today's game. It seems to me when I go to an NHL game, there's so much hype, pre-game hype, fireworks, cheerleaders, music, lights, and then you get these two teams that come out so flat. There's no body checks. There's no emotion, and it's almost a letdown. So I do find the games boring sometimes. Yes, the talent is through the roof. These kids are so skilled and so fast. But I think the rules should be changed a little bit to allow more physicality. I don't see a problem with the fight. The other side of that coin is the guys are so big now. It's probably good that they're not allowing them to fight, because some people could get hurt. But there's so much money in the game now. I know the owners want to protect their interests to keep their guys on the ice, but I don't think the hockey is as exciting today as it was back in the old days. You watch some old YouTube videos back of the 1980s, and in the playoffs and everything else, nobody missed a check. Everybody got hit all the time. You couldn't stand in front; you'd end up on your butt after one shot. The icings where, if you didn't touch the puck, some guy cross-checked you from behind. That's one rule I'm glad they changed, but still, the fans used to get into it more and more emotion. And, there was nothing like a flat game, and then you send out your fourth liner and he runs around, body checks three guys, ignites your team, lights up the fans, and, brings some emotion to the game. So I think that part is missing.
I did watch one junior hockey game where these two players were fighting, but at the end they actually shook hands afterwards. I think they were both ejected, but they showed good sportsmanship in the end, and I think that's important too.
Well, that's all good. That's very noble. But in our day, we didn't do that. Yeah, we just carried that same energy into the next game. And the fans, I think, if you ask any fan, they liked it a lot better too. When we sold more tickets.
Is it also true that you played for the Chicago Wolves briefly from 1994 till 1996?
Yes, I did. I retired in '90 from the Blackhawks. I took a couple of years off, and started my aviation career, and I ended up actually playing a summertime roller hockey, professional roller hockey, and the only reason I did is the owner made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and I was a little overweight, wanted to get back in shape. So I played in that league and actually dropped a whole bunch of weight. And my teammate, Grant Mulvey, was the general manager, and down with 4 or 5 times, said no thanks. And then their owner made me an offer I couldn't refuse, so I thought, okay, I'll go to training camp, and if I don't embarrass myself, because I was older, I was 34, 35 years old, and actually training camp turned out pretty good. I ended up playing for 2 more years.
About your aviation career, what inspired you to become an airline pilot?
The inspiration came from working with the Ministry of Natural Resources as a firefighter here in Espanola. I did that for a couple of years. Also worked in the park section. Working on the ground with 4 other guys. It was so cool to watch the water bombers pick up water off the lakes and then come in and drop their loads. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be a water bomber pilot. But by the time I retired and got into my aviation career, I was probably a little too old to do that sort of thing. I didn't really know how many jobs were available, so I continued on in the commercial aspect of it. I did a little bit of cargo in the beginning, and then got into flying passengers, and then I got hired by American Airlines at 40 years old, and ended up with a 25-year career out of it, so it worked out real well.
So you're currently living in a suburb of Fort Worth, Texas, right? And that's where you were stationed out of while you worked as a pilot? So what does the future hold for you, do you think?
Well, I'm retired now. I aged out with American at 65, and now I'm spending a lot more time up here in Canada and enjoying retirement life. I haven't looked back 1 second, staying busy with some traveling, and I have some plans for the property up here once I get up here a little bit more. And I do a lot of motorcycling, so I've done a lot of motorcycle trips in different countries, and going to continue to do that.
Well, it was really nice talking with you this week on the Medley, and I really enjoyed hearing the story about your career as well as your experience growing up in our hometown, Espanola.
That's right. Yeah, Espanola's been a great spot. I tell people home is home. I'm spending a lot more time up here. I enjoy the town of 5,500. I enjoy the outdoors here. It's really a beautiful area. And I absolutely love Espanola and the area. And when I come back, it's good to see family and friends. So really looking forward to doing a lot more of that.
And that was former NHL player and Boeing 737 pilot Al Secord. I hope that you enjoyed this week's edition of the Medley, and remember, we're all kinds of different.